Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. Today is Friday, October 18th, 2024. I'm John Podhoretz, the editor of Commentary Magazine. With me, as always, executive editor Abe Greenwald. Hi, Abe.
Hi, John.
Media commentary columnist Christine Rosen. Hi, Christine.
Hi, John.
Washington commentary columnist Matthew Continetti. Hi, Matt.
Hi, John.
And joining us today, commentary contributing editor, contributor, staffer, podcaster extraordinaire at the Free Press, whose podcast, The 100-Year War for Palestine, I believe, do I have the name right?
The 100-Year Holy War.
100-Year Holy War, about the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. I recommended on yesterday's podcast.
Thank you so much.
Eli Lake. Hi, Eli.
Great to be here with everybody, including Continuity the God.
Continuity the God, and we are in a celebratory mood. We ended yesterday's podcast with the early indications that Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind of October 7th and the sort of the brains behind Hamas, had been killed. And indeed, of course, Yahya Sinwar is dead. And I would submit, just going to throw this out and then have you react to it. I put this on Twitter yesterday. Yesterday was one of the most important days of the 21st century. Is that an overstatement? I'll defend it, but I want to see how you guys react to it.
Well, so it was a great day, but I think I'm in the minority here today, as I was yesterday. I am very cautious of what I would call the personalist fallacy in counterterrorism, which is the idea that one person's death will solve everything. And while I take Abe's point in his excellent piece on the website yesterday that when you whack all the moles, you win the game. So if you do eliminate all the terrorists, then you have won. I'd be very cautious of putting too much on the killing the person of Sinwar. This was the same logic that informed the Obama administration's counterterrorism strategy after the death of bin Laden in 2011. And because bin Laden was killed in the raid, the Obama administration believed, well, that's it. The war can now come to an end. We removed all of our troops from Iraq at the end of 2011, that same calendar year. And what happened? Well, ISIS came and the war continued and we were back into the Middle East. So I would just say it was a wonderful, great day. More needs to be done, but I don't know if it would rank at the most important days.
Okay, so my argument is that something happened that is of inestimable importance in the middle of what I think has been a decade-long crisis of legitimacy for democratic leaders across the globe, which is that on October 7th or on October 8th, Israel, in the person of Bibi Netanyahu, but I think it was a national view that stretched, across the entire body politic, said, Hamas must be destroyed, Sinwar must die, we must take out this threat to us. And a year and 10 days later, that goal has, if it has not been fully achieved, when we won World War II, it wasn't like there were German, there was a German counterinsurgency that faced our troops in Western Europe after VE Day. So there will be such a thing.
Well, and you left out one
Gaza.
of the goals,
Okay.
John.
Yeah.
The other goal was get the hostages back.
Right. Okay, but that's why. Okay, so get to that. But let me. So the larger point is, Israel said we are going to destroy Hamas. Israel had said it before. Bibi Netanyahu said this in 2014 when the first real major war between Israel and Hamas took place. There had been smaller, conflicts in 2009 and 2011. But that was a war, and Bibi said we're going to destroy Hamas, and guess what? Hamas was not destroyed, and in fact, there were other incursions between 2014 and 2023 And while those were going on, Hamas was constructing the underground tunnel city right under Israel's nose without Israel's knowledge. Israel said, we are going to do this thing. Maybe it's not entirely done, but it's 80 to 90% done. And for once in the last 10 years, the democratically elected leader of a Western democracy has fulfilled his promise to retard, reverse, and fight off an evil and do something to defend and advance the interests of his country. And that Israel's the smallest of these democracies and arguably the most threatened, but also the most outsized in term relative to its population and its strategic position. So that's why I think it's, in that sense,
so I think
enormously important.
I think you could say that in the context of the war, what's happened over the past few weeks between the attack that killed Nasrallah and now the accidental encounter with Sinwar that led to his demise is the equivalent of the Battle of Gettysburg or the Battle of Midway, a turning of the tide. I would endorse that 100%, but it's not over. As long as the Iranian regime remains in place, these networks will have the resources to reconstitute themselves and rebuild and wage war against Israel. Now, that's a longer-term challenge. There are ways in which we can deal with that. That's not going to happen overnight. But I'm saying that it's a long-term conflict. And also, I'm very, very alarmed, as usual, with the administration's response. That we have reporting now that Biden told Netanyahu in a phone call from Air Force One while Biden was on his way to Germany to end the war. Now's the time to end the war. You got what you want. You got Sinwar. Let's make a deal. Again, thinking that it's Israel that is the obstacle to a deal.
Okay. So just two quick things. The terms on which Israel began the war of October, that it responded to the war that began October 7th. Its terms were, we are destroying Hamas. The question of how to deal with the axis of resistance, or whatever you want to call the Iranian seven-front assault on Israel, that was not that the goals and aims of the conflict that began on October 7th for Israel were targeted specifically to removing, extirpating, and destroying Hamas in Gaza and returning to the state of deterrence that Israel had against, in this border area. The larger question of whether or not Israel can secure a genuinely lasting peace in the region goes to Iran, but that was not the stated goal. So that's why I say it's not Midway. And it's not Gettysburg. First of all, Midway was the first victory in the battle in the Pacific. Like it was a tide turning, but it was also like the moment at which the Americans got their sea legs. And I don't think that analogy holds here. But to get it to stretch it out a little further, I think rightly said, this was one of the things that was amazing about this attack, Eli, is that it was an ordinary group of, trainees learning how to be tank commanders. They were in a depopulated area. They saw some movement in a house and they fired a rocket and somebody was injured, and they send the drone in. The drone sees this guy who throws a stick at him, and then he's taken out. So was this accidental? Well, it's an accident that comes after a year of war that leads precisely to the conditions in which the head of Hamas is sitting in some weird empty house in where I don't think we quite know where it was, because I don't think they've said where exactly it was. And that is the opportunity, is the result of the war. The opportunity that is who got Sinwar, means it didn't have to be an intelligence triumph. It didn't have to be a technological breakthrough like the beeper attack. It was something that happened in the course of the war that had been fought successfully to at least this climactic moment in which an ordinary group of grunts gets Hitler.
Well,
That's it. Okay.
it's extremely important because of the enemy that the story of Sinwar's humiliating demise is spread far and wide among Palestinian and the wider kind of Arab population. Because we're already seeing an effort to try to say he died in the field fighting the bad guys, and that Palestinian martyrs, they will live forever. It goes back to the martyrdom of Izzadin al-Qassam, which Hamas reveres. And this is the story. The real story is that the dreaded Yahya Sinwar, who tormented not only Israelis but of course Palestinians, died in a rubbleized building with 5 passports, a wad of cash, what appears to be making his way to Egypt to flee. It's very important that that story is understood and internalized by Palestinians, because that's the moment where you can begin to maybe see what you want is a breaking of the will, saying, listen, fundamentalism, jihad, resistance is getting us nowhere. Look at the death of Yahya Sinwar. To quote Trump, when he said of Baghdadi, he died like a dog. It's very important that lots of people, Palestinians, sort of see that this path is nothing but catastrophe. That maybe opens up a political opportunity for something different. Because what we had before, long before October 7th, the dynamic was that the corrupt, autocratic Fatah, the alternative to Hamas, was increasingly aping and mimicking Hamas. After October 7th, Palestinian Authority pretty much said it was a wonderful act of resistance, and they defended it. They were following Hamas's lead. This is an opportunity now, especially if it's good that there's so much video of this and there's so many photographs of this. Get the story of Sinwar out far and wide and make it clear. He was, he died like Whitey Bulger on the run. He died like a dog, like the rat king that he is.
And if we can talk about supernatural interpretations of an event like this, he died with the initial attack on him that we then saw the drone reveal his body.
Right.
He died with his arm severed. Who else had his arm severed? Hirsch Goldberg Poland had his arm severed on October 7th and was driven away in that golf cart with the Hamas terrorists and survived until he was killed to protect Sinwar from discovery in the tunnels at the end of September. And the message to me is pretty astoundingly clear. An arm for an arm and a death for a death. And Rachel Goldberg Poland and her husband John Poland at least have achieved a measure of justice in the killing of Sinwar. Grim justice, but justice that would seem to be a direct message to them from whatever force there is in the I would define it more broadly, but more generally, or more specifically than that. But I will forbear from doing so.
Can we speak about another message that was revealed to have been utterly, as we discussed at the time, utterly incomprehensible and actually immoral? And that's the message of the Biden administration a few months ago, just saying we should not go into Israel should not go into Rafah. The scolding, the hectoring from Biden, from Blinken, from Jake Sullivan, from Kamala Harris, who went out yesterday and delivered a perfectly decent statement, but a statement that should have had an asterisk on it that said, none of this would have happened if Bibi Netanyahu had followed America's, hectoring advice about Rafah. He was found in the very place that Israel was constantly told by the United States, its ally, not to go into. And I think her attempt to look presidential and to have her sort of Bin Laden is dead moment falls flat if people don't remember that context, because that was pretty recent. I know people don't remember what happened 2 weeks ago, never mind 6 months ago, but it is really important, on top of what Matt mentioned about what Biden had told Netanyahu just yesterday, really important to understand that this happened in spite of America, not because of its support.
Right. Hey,
but Jake Sullivan came out, excuse me, and said this was done with American help. It is through our cooperation and intelligence sharing that Israel was able to do this. Yeah. To
take a
kill
moment
Sinwar and other high-level targets.
Yeah,
Can we take a beat to quote the woman from White Women for Kamala? Can we take a beat? Jake Sullivan, Antony Blinken, these people represent, from, I think, a commentary, reader's perspective, the best possible people on national security and foreign policy for a Democratic administration. And they have been the pits.
Well,
they have been the worst. Every time they make the wrong decision.
This is a very important point you're making. And
it's such an important point, because
such an important point, but
worse.
It's so important that it's obscuring the fact that apparently you crashed the White Women for Kamala Zoom, Eli.
Yeah,
that's
okay.
Well, I didn't quite realize that.
It's all about how you identify.
I want to hear more about
totally
that
fine.
later. But your point is very true, and it dovetails with something I learned, or I watched a lecture that by the Stanford historian, the Hoover Institution historian, Stephen Cocken, Stalin's biographer, the other day.
Great writer, by the way.
One of my lodestars.
Yeah.
And Cocken made the point that, okay, Harris v. Trump. Trump wins. It's the second Trump administration. If Harris wins, it's actually the fourth Biden administration. Right?
Or the fourth Obama administration?
That's what I mean. The fourth Obama administration. Sorry, it's early. We're recording this early.
Yeah.
It's the fourth Obama administration. And what is the trend line in all administrations? Downward. So the second administration is always worse than the first. The Biden administration, which is the third Obama term, has been terrible. So if this is the baseline, if this is the best case, as Eli says, from our perspective, and it's been completely disappointing and maddening the whole time, imagine what Obama's fourth term in the person of Kamala Harris might look like.
Okay, I want to talk about the, Biden saying it's time to end the war. And Abe, to get to what you were writing about whacking the moles, which you can read on the commentary.org website, Abe's post yesterday. One thing that has happened we keep talking about how in the election, Matt, you kept saying Harris had many paths to 270, and those paths seem to have narrowed. And each of these two candidates has a narrow path to winning the election. The paths have narrowed. What Israel has done over the last month has been to open up a multiplicity of paths to its own geopolitical success from here on in, and military success, by which I mean the attack on Hezbollah, the fact that it now has kept its powder dry on how it is going to respond to Iran, and now the killing of Sinwar means that for the first time, if you say to Israel, you know what, you need to go to a ceasefire, Bibi Netanyahu is publicly saying stuff that is congruent with that. There is now a constructive role for the United States to play over the next 3 weeks until the election, or 2.5 weeks, or whatever it is. Blinken can go to the gutteries now and say, end this now. You got nothing left. You've got no arrows left in the quiver. You tell them to return the hostages. Bibi said yesterday, bring in if you're a Hamasnik in Gaza and you bring in a hostage, we'll let you live and we'll let you go. There are 100 plus. There's remains. We don't know the circumstances. We don't know how many are alive. We don't know how many are dead. He said, come in and we're not going to kill you. That is a totally different and new message that he has. He has said, there's nothing left for you. You're holding hostages. We want the hostages. We will prioritize getting the hostages out over like hunting you down, which we will do. We will do that. We will do what we have to do to hunt you down. Bring them in. You'll live. And, probably we'll let you go. That will be your amnesty. That's the first time he's been able to say anything like that. And it's also the first time, in my estimation, that America can play a constructive role in relation to returning the hostages. Because all the arguments now are any further continuance of hostilities on the part of Hamas and Gazans is a suicide mission. It's a fool's errand. And the people who are on this suicide mission and would maybe want to follow and don't want to do it, like Sinwar apparently did not want to die in Gaza. That's why he had the money and the passports and was out instead of in the tunnels, he was outside trying to find a path outward. Israel now has this path. It also, by the way, means that Bibi has opened up a window of opportunity for him to figure out when and how to hit Iran that is no longer as desperate as it seemed 3 or 4 days ago, when people were already going, why hasn't he hit back against Iran? I don't understand. Is America holding him back? Was the deployment of the anti-missile system, the THAAD system by the United States, a way of holding him back? Now they can mop up in Gaza. He can wait till, if he can afford to, he can wait until after the election to buy Biden a little time, and then he can deliver hell on Tehran. That's another path he can take, or he could do it tomorrow, because Iran will think, well, he's going to wait to help the election, and he'll do it as a surprise. Multiple paths to Israeli goals. That's another reason why I think this is one of the most significant days of the 21st century, because this effort that we are now describing by the Biden administration to, on the one hand, support Israel's defense, and on the other hand, stand as a kind of active daily critic of Israel's tactics, strategy, and deployment of its offensive defense, right? Reestablishing deterrence is effectively a defense, but you have to do it by going on offense, has been discredited. And that's just a fact of life. They said, don't go. I looked at the maps. You can't succeed in Rafah. Really? Guess what? Are you going to say that again? What are the Biden people going to say to the Israelis that the Israelis have to listen to, except politely?
Well, I think
their entire approach has been discredited.
I know that this was directed toward aid, but I want to interject and say that my best hope is that Israel continues to ignore the administration and to pursue its goals, regardless of what it says. But I would have liked to have seen maybe the president come out and say, Yahya Sinwar is dead. It's a great day. He was a murderous, psychopathic genocidaire. And he said something equivalent like that. But then I would have liked to have seen him pause and say, and now's the time for Qatar to expel all the Hamas so-called political leadership that it's been harboring for decades. And now's the time where we're going to truly impose hard-hitting sanctions on the Iranian oil industry. Instead, what does he say? Now's the time for Israel to make a deal that releases the hostages and gets us to this position where we have to figure out what to do with Gaza that no one has any idea of, and then maybe do our bank shot for Saudi.
And Blinken released a statement about the call he had with Qatar, saying they thanked
yes,
Qatar.
Thank you, Qatar.
They're thanking Qatar. Thank you for that.
The problem with the administration here, and this has been every step of the way, is that they see each chapter of this as the whole piece, and want it to end. Want each chapter to end. So they didn't want Israel to go into Rafah. That would be a terrible mistake, a huge war. They didn't want Israel to go into Lebanon. That's a terrible mistake. They don't want Israel to fire back too robustly at Iran. That's a terrible. But Israel has to do all of these things. So it's very hard for me to see a constructive role for this administration because they're never going to be on board with the larger picture.
Can I give you my odd couple analogy? I always have to go back to the greatest television show of all time, The Odd Couple. Felix and Oscar go on a cruise, and Felix is, of course, annoying everybody and it being terrible. And the captain of the cruise gives Felix a whistle and says, okay, help us, as an activities director, I'm giving you a whistle. And Oscar goes up to the captain and says, what are you, crazy? What are you giving him? This is terrible. You're encouraging him. And he said, I have a rule. When there's a troublemaker, I give him a whistle. So Bibi is giving Blinken a whistle. Bibi is giving America a whistle. Go help us negotiate getting the hostages back. You're the interlocutor with Qatar. Say whatever you want. I'm giving you the whistle. You got 2.5 weeks until the election. Go do something. Thanks a lot. Blow your whistle. Play with this toy over here in the corner while we, the grown-ups, fight the war that you should be fighting against this anti-American, anti-Western, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel evil. And you're a nice boy, come from a nice rich family. You finally got to be Secretary of State. Everything you've said is stupid. Everything you do is annoying. Your foreign policy is terrible. But there you are. Go blow the whistle in the face of the Qataris, and we'll just keep sailing the ship where we're going.
All right. There is another thing that the United States can do. And John, you sent this to me yesterday, but one of the details that came out of the Sinwar demise is that one of his bodyguards had an ID card that said he was a teacher for UNRWA, which is listen, we already had all the evidence, but it's like this is the cherry on top of the sundae. End UNRWA. This is a serious political, diplomatic challenge that the United States could do that Israel can't possibly do alone. But the evidence is there. We have to rebuild Gaza. You can't have Gaza in rubble like this. So great. Let's create a new agency or figure out some way. But UNRWA can no longer be in charge of this because they are so thoroughly corrupted and penetrated. And what other evidence do you have? One of Sinwar's henchmen, as he was fleeing Gaza, was an UNRWA teacher. That's all.
More important, Israel is on the verge of declaring UNRWA a terrorist organization, and therefore kicking it out of its headquarters in Israel, and removing all diplomatic immunity from all employees of UNRWA. So you're saying Israel can't do it alone? I think that kills UNRWA. Well, I don't know how UNRWA operates if the employees of UNRWA are viewed by the sort of host country, even though they're not really the host because they only operate in Gaza, but they administratively have to go in and out of Israel and all of that. Basically, Israel is destroying UNRWA from within.
That they can do that,
but to Matt's point,
they can't rebuild. They can't. They have. You need another.
No, of course not. But to Matt's point, we would like it if the United States were on board with this.
They're not. They're the United States.
Right, but we pulled out of
don't pass the law. They're telling them
in the 1980s we pulled out of UNICEF because UNICEF was basically a support structure for terrorist organizations in Africa or totalitarian governments in Africa, and we said the United States is withdrawing its financial support and any logistical support and personnel from UNICEF. So there is actually a precedent to saying we don't work with this UN agency. It's an evil, and of course, and the UN Human Rights Commission or whatever the Human Rights Council is that we pulled out of as well. And we can do it with UNRWA, right? But it is true that what is so maddening about the administration is it will not say we are going to levy sanctions on Iran and its oil production. Why? Because it's 2.5 weeks to the election. I was driving through New England over the last couple of days. Gas prices over New England are under $3. And anything happens, if there's a strike in Iran on, so apparently they're not allowed to strike the nuclear facilities. And if there were a strike against the oil facilities, there would be at least a momentary oil future shock of some sort, and oil prices would rise, oil futures would rise, right? So, and they're like, oh no, that means gas prices will go up 50 cents before the election. And that's the last thing. Well, all that does is remind people of inflation and all of that. We've got to keep Israel from doing that. And that is where Israel suddenly has the upper hand with the United States, which is the point I was trying to make. They know that this is a domestic consideration for Biden. If Israel has ambitious plans to do something major in Iran, that doesn't have to happen in the next 2 weeks, because it can, again, pick time, manner, and place of its choosing, and it needs a victory, and it got the victory with Sinwar's death. They can say, okay, we're not going to do anything. Go get our hostages back. Go do something constructive. I mean, they won't say it in this tone, but go do something constructive. Get the hostages back. And you know what? After November 6th, it is kaboom time. And don't you open up a lip to us. Now, Biden and Harris will do whatever Biden and Harris want to do. But in terms of that, Israel now has the whip hand in saying, oh, you don't want us to help Trump get elected? How are we going to work together here? Because Bibi...
I have a theory, by the way, that they've already helped Trump get elected, because I've been, for another project, for my next script, I've been going back and looking at, if you look at his elevator speech from 2015, he says Trump, over and over, we don't win wars anymore.
Speech.
The escalator, sorry, my bad. Yeah. We don't win wars anymore. What happened to winning wars? And I think Israel, in the process of winning a war, is a reminder of that part of the Trump message, which is sometimes interpreted by like Tucker and the isolationist right as end the forever wars. But it's actually, if you look at what he's saying, no, win wars. And that's what Israel is doing. So in a weird way, it's a reminder that we are not destined to be a country that wages forever wars and constantly pushes for
decline
ceasefires.
Is a choice.
Decline is a choice.
Decline is a choice. We can win wars. We could take out the Iranian nuclear facilities 5 minutes after we finish taping this podcast.
Yep.
We have the bombers. We have the bombs. We have everything. This has been the fight between Israel and the administration for 15 years, which is Israel says we cannot live with a nuclear Iran. This cannot happen. And it's really going to be hard for us to take out Iran's nuclear facilities, if not impossible. But there may come a time at which we have to take the shot that we have to take. And we might only have a 50% chance of pulling it off. And then the world is on fire. And you, America, you have a 100% chance of success if you decide to do this. Your entire Air Force, the entire military of the United States is directed at high altitude bombing missions to use America's unique power to destroy things without risking American lives. You can do it in 5 seconds. Why don't you do it? Because if you do it, it'll happen. And if we do it, it might not happen. And I'm telling you right now, we may have to give it a shot. And that argument is present right now. And we have this bizarre administration that, in its inconstancy, says it wants to work for Israel's defense or support Israel's defense, and then defines Israel's defense as being cower behind your borders, don't do anything outside your borders except these cool things that are kind of really cool and are out of a Daniel Silva novel, and we'll say that was kind of cool. Oh boy, was that cool! But don't do anything else.
By the way,
you're right.
You know who was right 15 years ago was your father, Norman Podhoretz, who made this
as he was about everything. Yes.
Right. I'm just saying he laid it out.
He's still there, so it's yes.
He's still there. Right. I'm saying he laid it all out, and he's absolutely right. And we are now at the point. This is an inflection point. It's
Okay,
worth
so that's
rereading
why I
it.
say
Yeah.
maybe I should qualify what I said at the beginning of the
Yeah.
podcast and say this could be one of the most significant. Yesterday could have been one of the most significant days of the 21st century. We'll know that in 3 months.
Yeah.
We'll know whether the history of the planet was altered by what happened yesterday because of what follows on from it. Maybe nothing follows on from it. Maybe simply the war in Gaza goes on. Israel continues to mop things up. The hostages remain there. Israel remains in a state of torture over the hostages. Qatar doesn't do anything. Tony Blinken paints his nails. Jake Sullivan says more stupid stuff and celebrates his wife winning a congressional seat. Joe Biden sunsets at 4 p.m. and Kamala Harris cackles and shoots her Glock at Doug Emhoff for beating women up and impregnating.
In the
she has a
direction
Glock?
of Doug. In the direction.
Do you believe
She
that?
doesn't
Do you believe
actually-
she has a does she have a
Wait,
Glock?
can we just add one more thing? One more thing. One more thing to the fourth Obama term point that I think is important that Matt made earlier, and that's that the other thing we're not discussing about why the United States is not being tougher on Iran is that it at the highest levels of the Biden administration, it has compromised our national security by putting people in place like Robert Malley and others who were, in fact, working with Iran and likely passing information to Iran about our plans. And so I think that the compromised State Department, the compromised anywhere where those people were, and some of them still are at very high security level positions, that needs to be looked at as well. And a change of administration would offer an opportunity to clean house in that regard too.
Okay, so let's move on to the news of last night. It's not really news, right? So last night was the night where Kamala Harris did not show up at the legendary.
I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to do a really bold interruption because I think before we talk about it, we do need to have one rule. And you guys completely disregard my rule about trying to do math on the podcast. Fine. But this is a rule. No woman in her 60s should appear in a Catholic schoolgirl's uniform or in proximity to a woman in a Catholic schoolgirl's uniform. There. That's
a rule. But now we have to provide the context for why you're establishing this rule.
Because technically Harris did appear at the Smith dinner in a video feed because she refused to be there in person. And whoever on her campaign staff decided to do this should be fired. They got Molly Shannon, who I like, to revive her role as it's Mary Catherine Gallagher, the Catholic schoolgirl. She is
a character she debuted some 35 years ago.
30 years ago as a kind of dippy Catholic schoolgirl who smells her own armpits and acts nervous. And Kamala Harris actually was supposed to be the straight man to the Mary Catherine Gallagher character. And it was a bomb. It bombed as well it should. So that's the context of the 60-year-old women in Catholic schoolgirl uniform rule.
Okay.
Sorry. I just found it
the
so
commentary code, section 5, clause 4.
I found it appalling.
No 60-year-old ladies in Catholic schoolgirl.
I am obliged at this moment to say that Molly Shannon is a friend of mine and my wife's.
She's wonderful.
And so therefore, I just have to say is, I'm sorry. Molly, don't be too mad at me. I doubt she listens, her. But I just wanted to say, sadly, I'm not name dropping, but I'm not gonna anyway. You just put me in an awkward position.
I'm sorry.
She is hilarious. And she's an absolutely wonderful person.
I don't know why
I've destroyed her reputation in Hollywood because I've said that she's a friend of mine.
Anyway. I like the other character she did, though, of the older woman who with the
Sally O'Malley.
Yeah, Sally O'Malley. That's my preferred character of all her repertoire.
Also Irish. Okay, so the Al Smith dinner is the month before the election in New York. And it's this tradition that people show up at the Al Smith dinner, leading politicians, two presidential candidates. One of the moments the only moment really in the election season that they appear to get that for decades they've appeared together. That's not a debate, each making jokes about the other. And Kamala, of course, refused to show up, and Trump showed up. And on the day that as I predicted. I didn't realize how profound my interpretation yesterday was going to prove to be, that everybody is publishing pieces that said what I said yesterday on the podcast, which is that their closing argument is that Trump is insane that he is senile and that he is, dangerously untrustworthy because of his mental decline, shows up at the Al Smith dinner and, yes, reading remarks that are written for him by comedians or whatever. Yes, there are right-wing comedians. Knocked it out of the park. He was, I mean, and again, I am not a fan of the Trump humor bit thing. We've talked about this now for like 8 or 9 years. Abe, more of a fan, I would say, of the Trump as comedian. And would you care to provide a capsule review of Trump's work?
Oh, well, yeah, I always
stage from the dais.
Oh yeah, he's like, he reminds me of Alan King. I think he's great as a stand-up, as a deliverer of zingers. So this was the atmosphere is perfect for him. I liked his ribbing of Chuck Schumer, attacking the.
What did he say? What did he say? He looks so grim.
Yeah, glum.
He looks so glum sitting there, so glum.
Then rubbed his shoulder. Then he reached out to his side and rubbed Chuck Schumer's shoulder, which Schumer must have loved. And he said, it's okay, Chuck, with the way your party is, as woke as your party is, you can someday, if Kamala loses, although I noticed Trump kept saying Kamala no matter what. By the way, I don't think he says that to make a point. I just think that's the way he says her name.
You mean like 200 million people in Israel, 200 people in India named Kamala?
Right.
And in Pakistan who are named Kamala? Like, she is the only person in the world who pronounces it Kamala. Just so it is understood that
maybe that's the Canadian pronunciation.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Maybe that's when she was living in Canada. That's how she started Kamala.
So he said, it's okay, Chuck. If Kamala doesn't become president, as woke as your party is, you can still become the first female president.
Anyway, the great line, of course, is what he said. I'm afraid we have to wrap this up because Eric Adams informs me that a truckload of migrants is going to be occupying this ballroom.
That was good. And the other good Eric Adams line was, "I've never knew a vegan who liked turkey so much." That's my favorite. But
anyway, it was an unfortunate piece of timing for the Harris closing argument. Not that tens of millions of people are going to see the Al Smith thing, but I don't know. Those clips will go around wherever clips go around. I know that TikTok isn't really TikTok is not Trump's medium. But that stuff was perfect, right? It's like 15 second
also,
bits and bites.
This isn't really an important point, but I just want to mention it. I thought she's the joy candidate, right? And this is the event where it's like, we're not going to take ourselves seriously. We're going to have fun ribbing each other.
The joy is gone. The summer of joy has been replaced by the fall of fear.
She's going to win, everybody. I've said it before.
But she issued that statement.
He's going to win, or she's going to win?
No, he's going to win. Trump's going to win.
Okay, I have no idea. I have no idea whether Trump is going to win.
I know it's close,
but I do think
he's going to win. He's winning. Okay. Trump's winning.
But I
Eli's
do.
Doubling down.
Mark Halperin thinks that Trump's winning, and Nate Silver's prediction machine has now moved from Trump having a 49.6% chance of winning to Trump having a 50.4% chance of winning. And so maybe he's going to win. I don't know. But I genuinely, I still don't know because, he is himself, and at any moment, he can get back to the person that people who are actually going to decide this election go, that was, I don't know about him, whatever. But he did knock it out of the park last night, and she's trying to tell you that he's senile. And meanwhile, Dana Carvey is going on SNL doing the greatest senility routine since Walter Matthau and the Sunshine Boys, and reminding people every day of, not only what bullet they might have dodged, but also why is it exactly that Kamala? Okay, I'm pulling an audible and changing topics here. Has nothing to do. But why is it that she won't say what it is that she would do, or that what Biden did wrong? Can somebody? What is the political calculation that says?
Well, because she's still
this is
part.
the wisest
She's still
strategy?
part of the administration.
She needs his voters to turn out too. He still has some
Does he
voters
have
that
voters?
she's struggling with the people who still supported him and would have elected him whether he was, Copus
There are
Mentis or not.
You are saying to me that there are Biden voters
In the Democratic Party, I think there still are, and she's struggling with them, African American voters in particular. That there are some core turnout voters.
You think they would say, I'm not voting for her because she was insulting to him?
Well, I think they just wouldn't like the tone. I don't think they would like it.
So
I don't think it's disrespectful.
It has to do with Harris's personality, and she hates criticism, and she doesn't want to get any brushback from the Biden people if she strikes out on her own. And this also explains why she's so vague about everything. She doesn't want to take any definitive stands, because if she takes a definitive stand, it means that she's going to alienate people. And she's especially worried, as always, about alienating people on her left, because that's her milieu. That's the only environment in which she's operated, is coastal liberals. So it just comes down all the time to these extremely vague talking points that she just repeats. Who knows what's going on inside? but that's the public facing Kamala Harris we get.
Well, and she also doesn't have to take responsibility. And I know I keep beating this dead horse for her role in continuing the ruse that he was capable of being the president.
Right. Okay. So I have a question about the logic of her position relating to herself and Biden and the policy positions that she has taken. And again, maybe I'm like in galaxy brain mode here and being silly because this is not the way ordinary people think. Not that I have a galaxy brain. I just mean that I'm in. So she says, I prosecuted transnational. I all these positions that I took in 2019, I no longer hold effectively, right? She endorses Biden positions that are different from hers on fracking, on taxation, on various other things, right? She essentially says those things that I said while I was running for president are no longer operative. I hew to the views as expressed by the Biden administration. And then she says, my values haven't changed. That is a deeply logical inconsistency, because I grant you that values are not the same as policies. But the policies that you adopt and suggest and advocate for,
it's the same thing as always. She's trying to have it both ways. Okay. My values haven't changed. I'm still a liberals, but I'm changing my policies because I need to win this election.
But she's
chasing the electorate.
Right. But policies are values. If there is one thing that defines being what we do here and what people who take politics
not if you're
seriously,
a cynical hack, John.
Right.
Right. If you're a cynical hack, you do whatever it takes to win the election. That's what
my values haven't changed. I've always loved guns. I have a camo hat. Every Thanksgiving I make a turducken. I can't stop watching college football and NASCAR. Machine. My values haven't changed. Sure.
I still think that people think that values are expressed by policy.
Yeah, I think you're right, John.
I mean that is not. I don't mean.
I'm not saying it's an effective strategy she's pursuing, but I think this is what she's attempting to do.
If you're in local politics and you take a view on zoning and then you change your view on zoning, right? Is that maybe it shows that you're inconstant or you're weak or something like that? But that does not go to your values, right? Whether this street should have a right turn signal or it shouldn't, or whether or not, there should be a parking meter, parking meters should be free on Sunday, or you should have to pay for the parking meter on Sunday. That's not a values-driven political decision, though it is. These are important that directly affect people's lives.
I mean, there is a way in which your ideas about policies could change and your values could not, which is, if you say, I believe in, I believe that X group of people have been alienated and need a leg up. So therefore, I believe in direct payment, somehow support for this group of people, right? And then you say, oh, well, I didn't realize the unintended consequences of that. I still want to help those people, but the policies that I had advocated would not do so. That's not what she's saying.
Right.
So what she is effectively saying, John, is, yes, I still believe in the things I said, but I will no longer publicly say so or do anything about it.
Right, and this is
That's
this is
precisely
why
what she's
her
saying,
answer
yes.
on to Brett Baer on the trans prisoner ad
That's what I was thinking.
was
Exactly
so
right.
revealing. The answer was simply, "I'm going to follow the law. I'm going to follow the law."
Also, she said, Trump, hey, he's throwing glass. He's in a glass house. He's throwing stones. I mean, it was his. I mean, what is she talking about?
By the way, I'm going to follow the law is a fantastic, quick, cutesy answer. But let's talk. This is where we start getting into, again, galaxy brain stuff. But like, okay, she wants to be president of the United States. She plays a material role in the passage of laws as that go before the Congress passes a law, sends it to her, and she signs it, and it becomes law, or she vetoes it, and then Congress has to go through extraordinary machinations to overturn her veto to make it law. So there is no such thing as fixed law in that sense.
It's the same thing as when she says, I will make it very clear, my presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's.
Yes.
Okay. On the surface, okay. But then you just take 1 second to think about what she's saying, and it's completely meaningless. She has this fascinating rhetorical method where she gives you additional information that doesn't matter while completely obscuring the meaning of statements she makes that do matter. So during the Brett Baer interview, I always liked how whenever she talked about the election, she would say, and we are going to have an election in 20 days about what matters to us as a people. Or, next time she'll say, we're going to have an election in 20 days, which will be a Tuesday, which will happen on the first Tuesday of the month. And like, no one cares about that. She's just filling up space. But when it comes to issues like, okay, well, what is your position on whether taxpayers should subsidize gender transitions for illegal immigrant prisoners? Or how exactly will your administration differ from Joe Biden's? She's completely vague and shallow.
But her ability. So we all used to joke about her word salads, and they are kind of word salads. But in fact, it's kind of a weird superpower she has. Her powers of obfuscation. And whenever she starts a phrase by saying, "Let me be clear, it's coming. Just prepare yourselves for the." She's like a squid who like releases the ink and then flees. And you're left like trying to find your way. It's terrible.
Okay.
Your values haven't changed. Good to know. That's why the American people are going to elect Trump. Okay, moving on.
I had the other day I said she was like an AI because it's like the way she talks, it's like the next word that's the most likely next word is the word that she chooses, and then the word that follows it. It's a language prediction program. And I've now changed my view on this. Do you remember when we were kids and you had a take-home essay or something like that, and you were explicitly told this essay has to be 500 words. And the essay was your AP European history thing, and you had to write 500 words. And so if you didn't have 500 words to write, you wrote out the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics every time you had to mention the USSR, because you got 5 words out of it.
But she would add the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, which is a federation of nations in Eurasia, which is one of the 7 continents.
So that she can fill out her answer is my point to the necessary 250 words, so that it sounds like she gave an answer to a question, but was in fact simply, it's not even a word salad. It's more like how can I get from second 1 to second 37 saying nothing, because I don't even know what it is that I would say.
This is why Christine is right. It is kind of impressive in a certain way.
Yeah. And she, and unlike Eli, I'm unwilling to say that because she does this, she is going to lose. I don't know that she's.
That's not why she's going to lose. Can I give you my brief theory? 30 seconds.
Sure.
The fact that she came out and Obama was hectoring black men, saying they were misogynist, and she came out with a special plan just for the black men, which was, by the way, the definition of the soft bigotry of low expectations, like black people like drugs, so we're going to make it easy to start a weed business, which is insane. That tells me that all the stuff that the Trump people have been saying for over a year, we're making incredible inroads with African American men and Latino men, that's probably true. The internals of the Democrats are saying the same thing. And at a certain point, that puts far more stuff in play than we're used to. That's my thinking on it. I'm not convinced that the modeling always, it could be the pollsters have accounted for the fact that Trump always underperforms, overperforms what is in the polls. But that to me says there is something going on, and he really has appealed to this constituency, which Democrats have taken for granted for 2-3 generations. So
you could be right. And again, we are now in a situation in which the election is so close that we're only going to know. There are two possibilities, right? We're only really going to know what the story is. I mean, this is literally true. We're only going to know what the story is after the polls close on election night. There is the possibility of a last-minute meltdown of one or the other of these candidacies. I mean, It has happened. It's happened in the past. Bush almost melted down in the last 5 days after the revelation of the DUI 33,000 years earlier. Carter melted down in the last week. And one or the other of them could melt down, and that will show up in polling, is my guess. Kerry kind of melted down. I just remember Mark Mellman, the Democratic pollster, who wrote a piece in The Hill in 2004 when everyone was saying it was a jump ball. And granted, Bush only won, by winning Ohio, only won 286 electoral votes. But Mark Mellman said the data are not going the way that I would want them to go. I'm just looking at this, and it's just not. He's coming up short. Things are coming up short. If you look here, you look there, you look the other place, and that was what happened. That it was a jump ball to the last weekend. So it could well be that.
Remember when the first exit polls came out in the evening of Election Day 2004, they showed a Kerry landslide.
Yeah,
so people
12
should be
points.
Extremely cautious about this. My only rebuttal, I'll be brief, just as Eli was brief, to what Eli was arguing is, if you watched the Univision town hall with Trump, there was a Latino man, a construction worker, who asked Donald Trump, I voted for you in 20, but I've been very leery of supporting you again after January 6th. What do you say to people like me? And Trump's answer was awful. It was just awful. And
it was a day of love.
And so that was, he said it was a day of love, and he went on a rant. And that is a clear 30-second ad. Just as Harris's response that not a thing comes to mind about what she would do differently than Biden is a 30-second ad. And that's why we just don't know who will win.
She's using that day of love thing everywhere now.
The 30-second ad that they're now running is a mangled quote from the Maria Bartiromo interview on Fox News Business, where he says he was asked about whether there's violence on election day, and he said, maybe bring in the National Guard or maybe even more. But they're turning that into he's going to bring the military against his political opponents, which is such a bizarre message for Democrats who have used the justice system against their political opponents. So I'm basing it on the fact that I find the Kamala campaign so incompetent. She's not been able to close the deal. She's terrible in these interviews. They keep changing the message. It was about joy. They were weird. He's a fascist. He's what is it? And they still don't have the message. And so you're right. The January 6th thing is terrible. We should all be worried about it. I'm with the commentary and John and everybody. He should have been impeached the second time. But nonetheless, we've gotten to this point where he's still going to probably win because they can't close the deal. And they have been so bad at governing the country. And I just don't think they have any answers left. There you go.
I would suggest to people, if you want the counter to what Eli just said, and Matt gave one possible counter. I listened the other day to Tara Palmieri's podcast, which is called Somebody's Gotta Win. And she had on Stuart Stevens, who was Romney's campaign manager and is now, a big Lincoln Project anti-Trump. He's no longer a Republican. All he does on Twitter is attack Trump and all of that. And I'm suggesting this as a Rorschach test to our listeners, if you get 30 minutes, to go seek this out and listen to this conversation, because Stewart makes the argument not only that Kamala is going to win, but that she's actually running a really good campaign, and that the Trump people fundamentally misunderstand the nature of the electorate and they don't, and all of that. And how you respond to his argument, whether it makes sense to you, whether it seems cogent. He's a very good talker. He's a very smart guy. He's seen a lot of stuff. He ran Romney's campaign badly, but probably that's not really why Romney lost. Nonetheless, he has been involved in elections forever, and it is an interesting Rorschach test, because I think in the end he is wildly unconvincing, but he sounds really convincing.
Yeah,
and I think when go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying this is the vibes election, so all I'm going to say is I'm getting 2022 vibes the closer we get to the election. That's all I'm saying. And I know it's apples and oranges, midterm presidential, but the closer we get, the more I feel the vibe. I'm like Peggy Noonan in 2012 when she was saying Romney was going to win. There's something in the air that's reminding me of 2022, where Republicans thought they had it in the bag, and then they looked up the next morning. It was like, ooh, not so.
Right. Okay, so those are there. We have two. We've got the Eli vibe and we've got the Matt vibe. And Matt, you have a recommendation to close
I do,
the
John.
weekend out.
Thank you very much. I would like to take the moment today to recommend a new book from my friend, my mentor, Elliot Abrams. The book is "If You Will It: Rebuilding Jewish Peoplehood for the 21st Century." It's Elliot's meditation on Jewish continuity after October 7th. It goes through the current state of the Jewish community in the diaspora, and then it talks about some concrete steps parents can take in order to ensure that the next generation of Jews in the diaspora have a connection to the Jewish people and to the state of Israel. It's a quick read. It's a very good book, and I highly recommend it. Funny story. I, of course, as soon as I heard it was going to be published, I pre-ordered it. And the package arrived on the day of release last week. And from Amazon, I opened it up and I turned to just a random chapter. And all of a sudden, I was reading sentences about how Christ is king. And I said, well, that doesn't sound like Elliot Abrams. And it turned out, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, the dust jacket had been put on another book, which was a case for Christian education. Now, I don't know if this was done purposefully, John, or someone at Amazon Fulfillment Center was trying to play a trick on Continetti. But suffice it to say that
is a weird prank.
The book was returned, and I got the actual book, and I enjoyed it, and I'm happily recommending it today.
I am taking out my copy, which is sitting here, and just seeing if this is Elliot's book. I think having had to make reveal my connection to Molly Shannon, I guess for the sake of the podcast list, I did not know that Matt was going to pick Elliot's book. Elliot is my brother-in-law. I played no role in the selection of this book, as the commentary recommends. I'm delighted that it was recommended. And Elliot, being a better Jew than I am, is certainly probably not listening to this, because he is probably observing the second day of Sukkot, unlike me. For all those who listen after the holiday is over, I hope you are having a wonderful festival of booths. You are dining out delightfully in this biting autumn weather, in your sukkah, shaking your lulav, smelling your etrog, and enjoying this fall festival. We'll be back on Monday for Eli Lake. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Again, at Honestly, go find the Honestly feed, listen to Eli's podcast, the title again being The 100-Year Holy War. Is that correct? Okay.
That is correct.
About the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, the con artist who became a unfortunately dominating political figure of the last century. And whatever, and Eli's work at the Free Press, which could pop up any day when you least expect it.
Yeah,
it's great.
And of course, Matt has a has a
I
Kamala
work as well.
column.
Yeah. Mhm.
No, but you have a Kamala column today in the Free Beacon.
It's Friday.
Yeah, which is about Kamala's Glock.
Not a children's story.
It's a whole thing. Tell me how you really feel, John. I know what happened when you read that sentence. You're like, all right, enough.
Listen. I just want her to put the Glock in the fryer. That's all I want. I want to see her run the fryer with her left hand and shoot the Glock with the other hand. That's what
That would be that's the equivalent.
She will win the presidency if she can pull that off.
That's the equivalent of Trump touching the orb of the Saudi king.
Yes.
And then 5 years later going to the Ohel to pray over the grave.
Exactly. This is Kamala's challenge.
Yeah.
This is Kamala's challenge. I think, Eli says she's going to lose, but Eli, even you might have to bow before reality, before destiny. Eat a fry made by Kamala and then see her hit that bullseye with the Glock.
Her impressive gun collection. Sure. She's a huge Toby Keith fan.
Okay. Well, anyway, for Eli,
if you go to the Naval Observatory, the Vice President's residence, you just find these Reagan posters and old copies of the National Review. That's Kamala. It's her values.
Her values don't change.
Eli. They don't change. They've been rock solid.
Exactly. Okay. So thanks, Eli. For Matt, Christine, and Abe, I'm John Podhoretz. Keep the candle burning.